Yo, what's going on, everybody? What's up, Tino? How you doing? Welcome to the stream. Today's Friday. Hope everybody had a good week. How was your week, Tino? Hey, Gary, how you doing? How was your week? This week went by fast for me. I don't know about you guys, but this week went by pretty fast. We're gonna have some people join the stream in a little bit. Sorry about the chair noise. But we're gonna have some people join, talk about the pros and cons for the Indianapolis Colts. We should see how that goes. It was good, and you? Yeah, my week was it was fast paced. This is probably one of the fastest weeks that went through in a while, to be honest. But yeah, it went by pretty fast for me, so it's all good. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. Our first guest today is Lucas. How you doing, Lucas?
I'm doing great. How about yourself, man?
Oh yeah, man, I'm good. Appreciate you for joining me today.
Always a
We're gonna
pleasure,
be
man.
talking some. Yeah, no problem. We're gonna be talking some pros and cons for the Indianapolis Colts. Due for time restraints, for my purposes, I think I'll break it down pros and cons by position. I think that'll be good for the stream instead of just doing it all at one perspective. Um, because to be honest, there are pros and cons for each position for the Colts. I don't think it's a general team pros and cons thing. I think a bunch of players at certain positions for this team to reach the next level has some goods and bads, and I think that'll be good enough for this live stream. So definitely want to see your thoughts on that. I know Mason said he's going to join in a little bit, so maybe I was trying to hold off a little bit, but we could get started, and then maybe he can jump in whenever he's ready. But people in the comment section, also, I want to get your thoughts on your pros and cons for the Indianapolis Colts. If you don't mind sharing with me, that'd be pretty dope. So we're going to go ahead and start off with the quarterback position. The quarterback position, pros and cons. You can go ahead and give me your thoughts on that first.
All right. Well, pros and cons for the quarterback position. Well, the big pro right now is there's just a lot of athletic potential in this quarterback group. I mean, Carson Wentz is a phenomenal athlete. He's like just a tick below what Andrew Luck was coming out as just a insane athlete, just a little bit not as polished and everything. So a worse prospect, of course, but still good enough to be the number 2 overall pick back in the day, behind only Jared Goff. And I honestly thought that Wentz was a better prospect than Goff. Just there was some concerns about his small school background over at North Dakota State. But besides him, there's also Jacob Eason, who's got a cannon for an arm. He's not quite as mobile as Wentz, but he has just like an insane arm strength that is unquestionably just a huge asset for him. And Sam Ehlinger, who we just drafted this past year, very interesting dual threat quarterback. Can run pretty well, can throw, has a decent arm, not crazy good like Eason, but still a solid arm, I'd say. But yeah, there's just a lot of variety of athletic potential there.
Yeah, man, absolutely. If we ask for, and to be honest, what we were asking for like last year was some athleticism, and that was one thing we were lacking with Philip Rivers. He wasn't able to be mobile when he had to, even if we wanted to just get a first down. I just feel like he wasn't athletic enough to go get that. But we do have that with 3 potential quarterbacks with Ellinger, Jacob, and Carson Wentz. We're not asking that from him, but that can be a reliable source if needed when we're playing some good teams next season. So that's definitely a pro. I can see it coming out of the Indianapolis Colts next season from the quarterback department. Now go ahead and let me hear your cons.
The cons, I'd say, is accuracy with all 3 quarterbacks at some level. Wentz, in particular, his accuracy and his fundamentals have really gone downhill. For talk about his technique, I'd defer more to Zach Hicks. He has an amazing article series on that's just starting over at the Stampede Blue, or Stampede Blue. But overall, he really needs to focus on his accuracy. Last year, he was one of the least accurate quarterbacks, arguably, in the NFL. His mental processing was one of the worst I've seen in his from his career, really. And there needs to be a lot that he has to develop on, especially when in the pocket, under pressure, and even when not under pressure. He threw more interceptions when not under pressure than any other quarterback in the NFL. But to be fair, his rate of pressure was just so high that I think it just flustered him the whole entire season.
Oh yeah, man, definitely. I think that plays a role in a lot of people's gameplay. You know, when you're so used to the line that and the protection not being there, you're not prone to actually having time to throw the football. So your accuracy is not going to be on point. Now, I'm not saying that all of this is to blame on the Eagles and the offensive line, but it has something to do with the regular quarterback play as well. But I think the protection had more of the problem than him. I mean, even if we can use Jacoby Brissett as an example, Brissett used to not having really a good protection. So even when last year or the year before, when he was active as our quarterback, he would do that play action rollout pretty much every snap when it's not needed. And then, he was so used to just throwing the ball so quickly and not realizing that you actually have an offensive line is that it plays a mental aspect in a quarterback's position. It really plays a mental role when they play. So I think Carson Wentz, it's going to take time for him to adjust. But I think he'll be good. But that's definitely a good cons is accuracy for quarterbacks. I definitely can agree on that. What up, Cameron? How was your week? Cameron says Carson has a lot to prove. He got a chip on the shoulder after last year, big pro. Con is that he has to unlearn playing hero ball and become more balanced and taking his shots. And Luke has really just pretty much hit on that. It's a good thing that you said that. Colts loyalist is in the building. How you doing? How was your week? He said, do you think pre-snap is going to be a pro or con for Wentz? We have been spoiled by Rivers, Luck, and Manning. You can go ahead and answer that first.
I think pre-snap, it's not going to be as good as Luck, Manning, or Rivers. That is three of the best pre-snap guys that in the NFL during their days, and it's very tough bar to kind of reach that. And Wentz, he regressed a lot. Previously, back in 2017 and 2018, I thought he was a pretty good pre-snap guy, but right now, it seems like he's got a lot of stuff he needs to relearn under Reich, and I think he could become a really good pre-snap guy, but that might be a multi-year process, or maybe by the end of the year, really, if it happens at all in 2021. But I don't think it's going to be a straight-up pro for him this year, and it might be just a slight con, but I could go either way with that this year. It just all depends on what he learns from Reich and how to relearn how to read the defense before the snap.
Yeah, Ben, 100%. I think when I mentioned the schedule predictions, I did a few times. I always mention how it's probably going to take a while for Carson to actually get under the realm of going back to his normal self, because most people expect the Colts to just come out the gates and just to be this good team because of the roster or what they see on paper. But I think it's going to take some time for the Colts to actually get the wing under them and gain that composure like the Colts usually do, because we never come out the gate on fire or go on a nice little win streak. It takes us a little process, and I think that's what it's going to do again next year. Plus, us having a tough schedule at the beginning of the year is not going to help as well. So that's why I really think it's going to give us a little minute for us to gain our chemistry, get our feet back under ourselves, and and gain that composure of actually being a good winning team next season. And I still think we can win the playoffs, but I think the beginning of the year is just going to be a little rough.
Yeah, especially as we've been talking with Carson Wentz, he is going to have a learning curve. Even if he's coming to a new system, he still has a lot of stuff that he needs to unlearn and kind of reassess how he is as a quarterback. But yeah, ultimately, Carson Wentz, I don't think we should solely look at him as just a 2021 guy, but he's really a 2-year contract in this trade, because it's basically a 2-year deal worth $47 million over that time. That's guaranteed, and where we can't cut him after next year, or else it's a $27 million dead cap, which not exactly really good. But then after that, it's 2 years where you can cut him and there's no dead cap, no anything. It's basically a 2-year, $51 million contract then, which a little bit higher, but the cap will be up higher. So it's basically the same percentage and everything. So ultimately, just think of him as a 2-year rental at this point, just to evaluate and see how he is. And if he hasn't developed at that point, then we can ship him off and kind of start from scratch. But if he, at some point in this next 2 years, gets back to where he used to be, then we have a very good value quarterback.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's still kind of young in the age too. So I think that actually plays a good thing too. He's not in the older realm of the quarterbacks like the Cam Newtons, the Tom Brady's, the Aaron Rodgers. He still has a little bit of growth that he can develop from, and he's shown flashes of the potential he can do. So I think him having protection in the Indianapolis Colts, the offensive line, I think all that can play in his favor next year. And plus, him actually having OTAs and everything actually is another bonus that most people don't really look at. Is that Rivers didn't have that last year, so of course it was a little tougher for us to get the chemistry well because with the protocols and everything going through, we didn't really have the training and the practices in the off season like we do now. So that's what another good thing of that you can see and take into effect for the positive mindset for the Indianapolis Colts next year.
Absolutely.
Yeah, let's go ahead and hop into the pros and cons for the running back position. Now, this should be interesting to see your point on this. So you can go ahead and start with the pros or the cons, your choice.
Well, the pros, I got to start off strong on this one. The pros is just the overall depth and versatility of this unit. I mean, Nyheim Hines, if we're going to talk about versatility, you have to start with him. He is one of the most versatile chess pieces around with his amazing receiving skill set. He is really, really improved on the ground over the years. He's developed even more power, despite him being considered more of a scat back, but he has a decent amount of bulk for his size. And to go with his phenomenal speed and quickness and change of direction skills, and phenomenal hands. So there's like very few guys who I trust more as a receiving threat out of the backfield, like other than Hines. And like there's a short list, and that's like some of the better running backs out there. But of course, he's better in his smaller role. We don't want to overwhelm him with stuff. And to make sure that he doesn't have that crazy big role that could kind of wear him down over this course of the season, we got Jonathan Taylor, who is also a great threat out of the backfield, not quite as much of a guy that can line outside, but still phenomenal out of the backfield. And as we saw down the stretch last year, was arguably the best running back like on the ground, not named Derrick Henry, for the last 6 weeks of the season. And that is scary potential when combined with his athletic, with his receiving chops.
Yeah, man, 100%. I say depth is one of the pros for me. We're really deep in the running back position. We have at least 4 good running backs that can pretty much get you some yards when needed. Any one of them can explode for a big game at any moment, especially us having all those threats on the offensive side. It really opens up the game for us. And, it keeps the defense on their toes, whatever team we play, no matter how good they are or how bad they are. I think like going into the Rams game, you see the Rams have a very good defensive line, good pressure they can put on the quarterback. But I think one of the keys to beating the Rams is having good run play. And I think the run game could really play a big role in the Rams game. All we have to do is stick to the game plan. But I think when you look at the depth, when you look at Nyheim Hines, Marlon Mack, and Jonathan Taylor, you can run a 2 running back set against a team like the Rams and be successful. But I think us having consistency at the running back core could be a good a good pro. So now let's hop into the con section for the running back core.
The cons for this running back core, it's very hard to kind of find one for this. But if I had to say a con, it's a little bit just they're a very young unit. So that can be a pro for a lot of people because there's a lot of future ahead of them. There's, they haven't gotten to that wear and tear stage. But at the same time, it is like they're still needing some development here or there. Like there's still room for growth, but they're not at their absolute peak at this point for most of them. Like Marlon Mack, we haven't talked about him enough. Of course, he is a phenomenal runner, but currently dealing with his post-Achilles injury. We'll see if he can regain that same level of burst that he had previously, which can be a little bit of hit or miss nowadays, especially at the running back position. But I think Jonathan Taylor is going to be a phenomenal running back, and I think Nyheim Hines is going to stick around for long term. But the problem is, I just don't see that they're going to hit their full potential at least this year as a duo, just because of how much depth there's going to be, and they still do have some things they need to work out on. I mean, it's hard to find it with Jonathan Taylor, but he definitely needs to find more consistency. He can't have that first half slump. Nyheim Hines, he could get a little bit better as a pass protector, but as a I'm seeing in the chat. It's going to be tough to kind of delegate time for these guys to fully work out their kinks a little bit. But it's kind of nitpicking at this point with this running back group.
Yeah, 100%. He said, thank you for inspiring you to be a YouTuber. No problem. Appreciate that. Appreciate you for stopping by. Fifth Down Sports said the con for the running backs is inexperience, but it's very hard to find a con. Shout out to Fifth Down Sports. How was your week? Feel free to let me know in the chat. Coach Loyalist said running back con backfield, except Jonathan Taylor's under contract for only this year. Do you see us doing something with Wilkins, replace him with Duke back or someone else to have stability for the next couple of years? I think for Wilkins, I think this would probably be his last year. Or I don't see us moving him throughout the season, so I think this would pretty much be his last year as a Colt. But who knows? If he's a team guy, I feel like Wilkins would just be like a role player, if anything. Of course, everybody wants to get paid, but sometimes it's kind of hard to leave a team that's like in contention to go chase the money, and then you don't have any success at all anywhere else. Jordan Wilkins is a really good running back, but when you look at the system he's in, can he really produce anywhere else and be like that guy? I think he's literally a good backup running back. That he does have a good ceiling, but I don't know if he'll be successful anywhere else other than the Colts. Like, who has the good offensive line protection like the Colts, and especially its next man up in Indianapolis? Durability isn't always guaranteed when you're playing the running back. We know the running back's years aren't very long. Most running backs succeed for maybe 4 to 5 years, and then after that they just go for a downfall. And a guy like Jordan Wilkins can really just step into that role and flourish and be the next star for the Indianapolis Colts at any moment. So I can see us keeping Jordan Wilkins, but if he did decide to leave, I will understand as well, because he could get more playing time elsewhere, 100%. But let me get your thoughts on Jordan Wilkins' situation.
I absolutely love Jordan Wilkins as a player, but the problem is he's just always been behind guys who are just a little bit more talented than him, or have had like similar type of skill sets, but just can do it better. And he's been a very efficient backup, and I think he honestly could be like an RB2 on a different team, maybe even RB1 on certain teams, depending on their running back situation. But honestly, if Marlon Mack bounces back this year early on, and he's like showing that he's fully like close to or at 100% from his Achilles injury, I feel like you could possibly maybe just for this season feel very comfortable about that running back depth, like in case Taylor or Hines goes down when Marlon Mack stepping into a bigger role. You could possibly see like a closer to mid-season like trade of Wilkins for like a mid-round pick, just as the Colts kind of need a little bit more draft capital possibly next year. But honestly, that seems like a little bit out there at this point. Like, Marlon Mack is a big question mark, so I think as long as that's the case, then Jordan Wilkins will have a pretty safe role, at least for this year. But I see him as likely gone after this year. We're going to be focusing on some other guys to re-sign outside of him, and he could be replaced, like Colts Loyalist said, with the running back from Duke, who is Deion Jackson. I really like his skill set, but of course, undrafted free agents can be a little bit hit or miss, though running backs can have some pretty higher success rate there. So we'll see what happens on that front, but I really, really like the running back group as a whole, so hopefully Jordan Wilkins can figure a big role somewhere else.
100%. Fifth Down Sports says, my week is great visiting Chicago for the first time. I'm about to visit Soldier Field. That is nice. Appreciate you for stopping by before you visit Soldier Field. Make sure you wear some Colts jerseys so they can know who beat them in the Super Bowl. Nomadic Brian said the con for the running backs is getting them all enough playing time. And that's pretty much where I was about to go to as well for the con, is that it's only one football. You have so much talent at the running back core for the Indianapolis Colts. My thing is how everyone's going to see success with all this talent back there. We talked about Hines lining up in other spots on the field, other than running back, him being a dual threat. But when you look at Marlon Mack, Jonathan Taylor, and Naheem Hines, it's like if one doesn't succeed and the other one comes in, can they pick up the slack? And then that might lead into another thing, is losing tempo. Losing tempo can be another thing going into next season, is if one struggles and then the other one comes in and can't feel the need, and then we're forced to pass, the defense will already know what's coming, and that could be a lack of composure going into the game. So that was pretty much my con is that it's only one football, and we have a lot of talent, and how are all of them going to see the field at certain times? Now, of course, a pro about this situation that I just thought of is that every team has a certain scheme. And I feel like we have a running back for each type of scheme for next season. So, like last year, I did a running back, a dual scheme. So, for certain games, I would choose Wilkins and Hines or Wilkins and Taylor, and then I would choose Taylor and Hines for certain games. And I think that can be a big thing going into next season is there certain teams we can use Mack and Taylor. Sometimes we can use Mack and Hines more. Sometimes, like for example, if we play the Lions, we can use Jordan Wilkins to get him some shine. He have a breakout game. That's for fantasy owners, of course, as well. So, I mean, I think we have enough running backs to to scheme up against any team we play next year to be successful.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a lot of pick your poison type guys where you can play the matchups depending on who we're going up against. And there's going to be a lot of very interesting situations with the lineups. Like, if one guy is having a crazy good game, do you just keep on riding the hot hand, or do you kind of ease off the gas a little bit, especially if you're in the lead, to try and maybe give him some rest so you don't overwork guys? I mean, especially at the running back position, you got to be kind of keeping them on a pitch count and on a snap count, because the last thing you want is to run them too hard, too long, and lead to injuries.
100%. What up, JDW? How was your week? Appreciate you for stopping by. Let's go ahead and hop into the pros and cons for the wide receiver department, and that's another good topic of discussion. Before we get into that, Coach Loyola said, pro for our running backs is always the way they personally relate to one another. Awesome room, 100%. JDW said, I can't stay long. I'm playing football, bro, but we're taking a break. Obviously, get your Gatorade in. Don't go too crazy. I see you had what was that eye tape on the other day. I won't expose you, but I did see you. So Nomadic Brian said the pro we should be able to change the timing up on run defenses. Absolutely. Let's go ahead and hop into the wide receiver room. Go ahead and give me your pros on that situation.
All right. The pro with the wide receiver room is there is a pretty solid depth room here as well. Like, it's not as good as the running backs by far, but there's a good amount of versatility from here that you can fit very good roles with each different guy. T.Y. Hilton, obviously, I think he can have a really big bounce back year as a deep threat with Carson Wentz. But the problem is that you also got Paris Campbell, who's trying to become a deep threat. We also got he's more of a yards after the catch type guy, but we'll have to see if he can stay healthy first. Paris Campbell, the injury history has not been great for him. Zach Pascal, very reliable guy, kind of a complimentary receiver, but reliable hands, good, strong at the catch, great run blocker. You got Michael Pittman, who I just absolutely loved what he did down the stretch. He really surprised me with his yards after the catch ability, and he was a phenomenal intermediate guy coming out. So I'm really excited to see his potential as well. Ultimately, those four right there, you can kind of use around and have teams have a little bit of versatility, especially if you go on a spread look. But
yeah, 100%. Ben Kennedy, appreciate you for stopping by. He said we need more receivers. Then he said, I wish we would have got Julio. Don't we all? JDW says he thinks our receiver room is deep. He said we don't have a number one. We don't have a one top 10 receiver yet, but our wide receiver room is top 10 from 1 to 5 to 1 to 6. I like the confidence in that. The pro for our wide receiver core is that they're young. There's not a lot of wide receiver cores that are stuck together like this and they're very young. Praise the ballot for this situation, him staying with the team guys, not going out there getting other people to, learn the system or to adjust. We got people that's been in the system for a while now, and it's easy to mesh with. You got Michael Pittman Jr., who pretty much broke out at the end of the year. T.Y. Hilton hit his stride at the end of the season as well. We know how good he can be. Paris Campbell, he's shown flashes at the beginning of the year before he went down. We know how good he can be as well. So we all have guys with proven talent that can show how good they can be. pretty much number 2 wide receivers on any roster if they were added. So that's a good plus for us, being young and reliable. So now we can hop into the cons after saying reliable. Go ahead and give me your cons on the wide receiver department. And you pretty much just hit on it with Paris Campbell, but I'm going to let you finish that situation. Go ahead and talk about that.
Well, there's 2 big cons that I can see. One is health. Ty has been getting a little bit more banged up at his age, and you did just talk about youth being one of the biggest pros. There's only one exception to that, and that is T.Y. Hilton, sadly. And I absolutely love what T.Y. has done, but we got to see if he can stay healthy and how well he'll mesh with Carson Wentz. But, of course, as I mentioned earlier, Paris Campbell's health has been very, very poor to start his career, which is a little bit surprising, but we got to see if he can stay healthy. And the other big con is there's just no one true alpha at this point. We don't have a absolute wide receiver one who would be a wide receiver one on pretty much any team. And with that lack of an alpha means that we can spread it around, of course, without like anyone getting too much of an ego. But at the same time, there's not one guy who you can say absolutely in like a third down and like long, I need to throw it to this guy, or like we're in the red zone, we're going down for a game-winning drive, and I know that this guy is either going to be open or is going to be able to get this, go up and get that ball, no questions asked. So I think they can break out, especially Paris and Pittman have phenomenal upside and could become that alpha. Ty, if he has a bounce back year, could reclaim his alpha status again. Pascal probably will never be that guy, but hopefully I eat my words later and he becomes phenomenal and becomes the next like Hines Ward or something. But outside of that, I don't know. It's tough to really project that there's going to be a true wide receiver one this year.
100%. JDW said, I'd rather have defenses have to focus on multiple receivers and weapons than just one. Ben Kennedy said we will sign Richard Sherman for cornerback depth. Nomadic Brian said pro potential for breakout seasons for multiple receivers and cons is if on Campbell and new looks with Patmans and rookies. Coach Loyal said we almost have all the types of receivers except for the twitchy quick foot types. Hines will help fill that lane. Is there someone else? To be honest, to help fill those lanes other than Hines, you have a plug-in like Ashton Doolin or DeMichael Harris. They're quick enough to, fill in the roles just like Nyheim Hines would do. But, for the cons is you don't have a go up and get it guy. Every team has that guy that can just throw the football up and you guarantee they have a 50-50 chance of catching it. Now, of course, you can say, well, we do have Michael Pittman Jr., but we've never really tried something like that. The only time you can really use that as an example is the Buffalo Bills game at the end, in the end zone, the back of the end zone, when Rivers, they claimed he overthrew it, but, I think Michael Pittman Jr. over pursued it, and then it went too far. But, throughout the season, we never had we will never have that go up and go get it type wide receiver. You mentioned earlier that we don't have that alpha, and that is definitely a con going into next season, is that you don't have a guy on the roster when you can think when defenses come in the lineup, they're like, okay, we don't really have to worry about him while we have to guard him. So every team, including, we look at the Tennessee Titans, they have 2 alphas now, and that's pretty much a pro for them, but we don't have that in our situation. Now, of course, we do have T.Y. Hilton, and he's going to get double teamed, but I mean, I wish we had another guy that was, tall enough and a good route runner that's guaranteed to give us over 100, maybe 150 receiving yards a game. So that's definitely a con for us. I mean, but the sky is still the limit for our wide receiver core. This is no knock on them. They can still have a really good season next year with all the weapons we do have. But I do enjoy that conversation talking about our wide receivers. As of right now, yes, no scary guys. Yeah, that's the problem, man. We do not have any guys that's going to be scary enough for the teams to really adjust on.
And that really frustrates me. There's one guy who I really wanted in the 2018 draft who we know is very scary, and that's Terry. But yeah, we got the other Ohio State guy, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy, but maybe Paris Campbell will be a scary guy. But I really wanted McLaurin, man. I was saying every single pick on the second round, I hope McLaurin's there. And he was, but Ballard chose differently, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, man. Definitely. We could have got Scary Terry. We've seen how good he is. But I think us switching quarterbacks a lot, maybe that might have played a role in Scary Terry's production as well. But, I mean, everything happens for a reason at the end of the day. The con for Paris Campbell, of course, we talked about is his injury. I think that happens a lot with very fast wide receivers. Look at Deshaun Jackson, for example. They just cannot stay healthy. They're just so quick, and it's easy for them for the durabilities to not be there. And that's unfortunate because, that the beginning of the season, we just knew Paris Campbell, after the few plays, he knew he was just going to be a go-to guy, and hopefully he can just bounce back. And I know he probably can. So we're just going to keep the positive mindset going into next season. That's what I try to do. So the sky is the limit for our wide receiver core. Anything can happen next year. So now let's hop into the tight end core, the pros and cons for the tight ends. But before we hop into that, Coach Loyal said, not this year. Stretcher could be scary in a year or two, and that's 100% true. Nothing but facts there. Tall, can catch the football, definitely could be scary in the future. He could become our second alpha with Michael Pittman Jr. We do have veteranship in T.Y. Hilton. The passing of the the passing of the guard, changing of the hands. Marvin Harrison taught Reggie taught T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's going to teach Michael Pittman Jr. and Stretcher. So that's a good thing to look at when you talk about leadership. On to the tight end core. Go ahead and give me your pros and cons on that situation.
Well, the pros on this unit, I'd say, is there's a lot of two-way ability on this tight end group. You got Jack Doyle, who is a phenomenal blocker and is a very reliable possession receiver. You got Mo Alley-Cox, who has been moved around quite a bit in his tight end alignment, sometimes as an H-back, sometimes as an inline guy. Started to get a little bit more out wide this year, but he's been a very strong blocker. And we saw a little bit of a mini breakout with him receiving-wise last year, and I'm hoping that it continues into a much bigger breakout this year. But there's also Kylan Granson, who there have been some questions about his blocking, but if his press conference is to be believed, he is actually a much more better blocker than we are led to be expected. But I'll see if he can develop on that front. But he is a very, very strong vertical presence, and I really like his skill set as far as a burner type tight end that we just previously did not have.
Oh yeah, man. The tight end course, we're in a good space with the tight ends. Veteran Jack Doyle, if he can stay healthy, we know how good he can be. He can definitely be a go-to guy at any moment. Mo Alley-Cox, very tall, can catch the football, has been improving in my eyes. He's been improving to be better throughout the tight end position. And I think he can be a really good tight end in the near future for the Indianapolis Colts. Kylan Granson, we drafted him for receiving purposes. So for him to come on the field, I think he can be a good product. And he could be the next man up at any moment. And also adds into the depth. If we run those two tight end sets or three tight ends, we have a good blocking tight end core as well. And I think that's a good pro for our tight end section. Now let's go ahead and hop into the cons for the tight ends.
Well, the cons for this tight end unit is also there is not a proven dynamic threat there at this point. Jack Doyle, he was a good receiver previously, but he was never the great downfield presence that everyone really wanted, but that was a little bit to be expected. Mo Alley-Cox, he had that one phenomenal game week 2 last year against the Vikings, where I thought if they continued to target him like that, he could have been phenomenal. But outside of that one performance, he hasn't really shown as a consistent receiving threat. And even said on one of his big plays in that game, he got so wide open, he was surprised about how wide open he was, and he didn't know what to do with himself with that much space. So he needs to develop a little bit more on that downfield presence. And Kylan Granson, he's a rookie, and tight ends tend to take a little bit longer to develop. I think he is going to have a good role, Granson will, for year 1, but he is going to have to learn a little bit more to be able to get on the field in different packages.
Yeah, 100%. We don't know how long, how much Granson's going to play next season. him being a rookie. Let's go and hop to the chat real quick. Nomadic Brian said, tight ends, Pro Doyle should start healthy. Molly Cox should start healthy as well. Cons is none. What up, Anthony? He said, what up, homies? One day close to the season start. Absolutely. How was your week, Anthony? Feel free to let me know. If you guys didn't let me know how your week was in the chat already, feel free to let us know as well. Yeah, so we don't know how long Grant's going to see the field next season, but we do know one of these tight ends is going to take the Trey Burton role that he had last year for sure. With the game plan that Coach Frank Reich uses, we know that one of them are going to definitely see the field. And I think that the role Burton played, all those plays where he didn't, succeed in, I think one of our tight ends that we have in the roster could fulfill that role. And I think that's why we didn't bring Burton back, because I think our tight end role does have potential to be really good going into next season. But I think the consistency is one of the cons, and see how consistent our tight ends can be. But I think we can be consistent. This is no knock on Burton, but he wasn't the best blocker out there, and his hands were sketchy as well. So I think when you look at the tight ends we have now with Granson, who was a receiving tight end, you look at Doyle, who can catch the football, Wiley Cox, who can catch the football and is taller. If you can plug in Wiley Cox in Burton's role that he did last year, Wiley Cox will flourish. And that's no question, no ifs, ands, or buts.
I think that Wiley Cox, if he gets similar volume, maybe even a little bit more than Wiley Cox or than Trey Burton last year, he's going to have a very, very strong year. However, I do think that the role of Burton is going to be split between him and Granson. Jack Doyle, I think he needs to stay as a inline tight end. I don't think he should be moved around too much. Maybe a little bit H-back, but he's not quite as fast as he used to be, so I'd probably stick him more inline, especially on the left side to start of the year, because
especially against the Rams, huh?
Oh, yes. No question about that. I want him on that left side every single day or every single play that game. I mean, at that point, I don't even want Doyle to go out for a pass. Just stay there, protect Wentz, do what you do, my friend. But Molly Cox, he can definitely take that little H-back role that Burton had. But then in terms of going out wide, which Burton tended to do a little bit more with the Colts, I see Granson taking that role a lot more. So it's going to be interesting to see how they develop it, but I really like the tight end group. It's very deep, and we've been one of the better teams at developing tight ends over the years. So I really like the potential for that. And Carson Wentz targeted the tight end per game more than any other quarterback out there last year. So, and he is known to even hyper target tight ends in years past. So I think you're going to see a very good amount of work for them as a collective, but it might be tough for you to be a fantasy owner and having one of them, because there's just going to be a lot of inconsistency from week to week because there's 3 of them.
100%. Coach Loyalist said the year of Mo Ali Cox with exclamation points. He said we need him to meet his potential. Anthony Hurt said, I really think we need to have a significant amount of downfield targets this year. I agree with that. Nomadic Brian said eventually Granson will stretch the field. That's what Lucas just said earlier, and I definitely agree with that as well. And what else I thought about when you were talking about the tight ends is that the tight ends could be the key to beating the Tennessee Titans next year. Now, of course, we all seen the film of Danico Autry playing drop back coverage with Mike Vrabel. Oh, it was a beautiful sight. And I think the tight ends will really be the plug for exposing the Titans defense next year. And if we are able to air it out like we are expecting to do with all these weapons, I think the tight ends and the fantasy owners will love the Colts tight ends when we play Tennessee, because we know they are going to destroy that Titans defense. And I think that can definitely be the reason we beat the Titans. Now, of course, we can do good on the run play, but I think our tight ends will be a secret weapon going into that rivalry.
Absolutely. I think versus the Titans, up the middle is the way to go in attacking their defense. I've not been very impressed by their linebackers in terms of coverage throughout the years, and the best one is Jayon Brown, but I feel like he's better more in a downhill role. And they've really tried to more so this year focus on addressing the cornerback position and kind of replacing some guys, and we'll see how those guys do, especially Caleb Farley coming back from some major back injuries. And cornerback being a pretty tough position to adjust to rookie year. But the linebacker position is where I feel like they're weakest in their coverage, and Byer definitely regressed as well last year. Maybe he bounces back to his crazy good status a few years ago, but we'll see. I think that middle of the field is going to be very exploitable for the Colts passing offense. And of course, I know we'll be able to run the ball down their throats as well. So it's going to be a very interesting offensive battle between the Colts and Titans.
100%. Anthony Hurt says the entire league's defense's new Rivers was a statue. Once is going to make that totally different this year. Coach Loyola said last year Carson didn't have much other than tight ends. LOL. Tino said facts 100%. And Anthony. Definitely agree on that. We know that the Titans went out and got Bud Dupree and those guys, Autry and all of them, but we know most of them are going to be requiring pass rush. We know how Mike Vrabel is. Not really a coverage guy, let's just be honest. But, hey, man, I think the Colts has an advantage against the Titans, and the Titans have an advantage. It's probably going to be an offensive shootout, to be honest. But, I mentioned the other day about the video talking about Zach Ertz and Malik Hooker. And I said those are two guys that can really go to Tennessee and make a difference to that team if they were acquired there, because those are two positions that they really need. Let me get your thoughts on that before we go to another pros and cons about Zach Ertz and Malik Hooker being potentially acquired in Tennessee and what that can do.
That would hurt my soul, first and foremost. That would hurt my soul, especially because I really wanted the Colts to get Amani Hooker in the draft a few years ago. So that way I could constantly joke about the Colts having two hookers in the backfield. And the fact that the Titans would then get that joke, I'd be really
I mean, we got two Davises. Does that count?
Not quite the same bite to it, man. I'm sorry. But sorry, Sean Davis and Sean Davis. But you guys aren't two hookers, so the joke is not as funny, all right? But if Malik Hooker stays healthy, that would be very, very dangerous back there, especially since they do tend to run a little bit more single coverage, and that is more of his specialty. So that would be very, very interesting to see as terms of a fit. But of course, will he maintain that same explosiveness, because he also is coming back from Achilles? Very big question for him. Zach Ertz, they definitely do need a tight end to fill the void after Jonnu Smith left, and Ertz definitely has that sky-high potential to be that tight end. However, I've been talking about it like a little bit amongst some of the people in our the Blue Stable, mostly Jason Spides, who is a diehard Eagles fan and really wanted the Colts to trade for Zach Ertz in the draft. I am very off on people acquiring Ertz right now, especially since last year he lost a lot of explosiveness. His hands were the worst I've seen in his career. He was playing through injuries, so that can't explain it, but then you have to also worry about, will those injuries reoccur? And at his age, it's not a great idea to sign him for many more than like a year or two. And he could try and demand some pretty big cap potentially, but at this point, he probably won't get it. So both moves, if healthy and they return to their absolute peak, would be phenomenal. But I also could see them being very risky at this point. So if the Titans feel like they want to do it, they have a tendency to go all in on the risk. We've seen that through their draft strategy the last few years. They went Jeffrey Simmons. That actually ended up working well. They went Isaiah Wilson. That ended up not working well at all. Biggest bust in the first round, because the dude isn't even on a team and it's only been 1 year. He didn't play at all.
He doesn't want to play. He doesn't want to play for him. That's the crazy part.
Yeah, he got cut twice by two different teams, and just he is trying to live his best life, but he is not living the life that you need to in the NFL. But yeah, and then they go all in on Caleb Farley this year immediately after the Colts pick. So they're more than willing to take risks. So I wouldn't take any of those moves, put them past what the Titans would do.
100%. Let's go to the chat. Coach Loyola said, I would love to see what Campbell dissect Tennessee in the middle. Tino says Zach Ertz is the same player he used to be. Coach Loyola said, facts! Sorry. Jerry Booker said, I agree with Lucas about Zach Ertz 100%. How you doing, Jerry? How was your week? Uh, Definitely, yeah, man. It's a tricky situation, but I wouldn't knock Tennessee of doing that because I can definitely see them doing that after stealing Denico Autry. But
Yeah.
we know how Tennessee moves at this point. But it's all good. Let's go ahead and hop into the offensive line pros and cons. Now this should be exciting. I would love to hear your point, Lucas. Go ahead, carry it away.
The pros for this team is their starting offensive line, bar none, one of the best offensive lines, like in terms of starters in the NFL. You got, of course, Quentin Nelson, the 3-time All-Pro, who is doing some historic things and has the potential to be the greatest Colts offensive lineman, if not the greatest offensive lineman in NFL history. That's his ceiling. And at this point, he's on pace to possibly even hit that, which is insane. You got Ryan Kelly, who just made a second team All Pro this past year and has been a very, very good pass blocking center for years. You got Glowinski, who is a really good run blocker, has kind of developed a little bit as a pass blocker, but it's not his strongest suit. But he's a above average NFL guard, I'd say, maybe average on his worst weeks. And then you got Braden Smith, who was a dominant run blocker to start his career and now has developed phenomenally as a pass blocker. Didn't allow a single sack and hardly any pressures last year in 14 games. So, and of course, you got Eric Fisher, who we just signed. If he bounces back to the level that we saw earlier in 2020, which is a big if, but he's got Pro Bowl caliber. And that is a very, very stacked offensive line on both run blocking and pass blocking that, if fully healthy, Carson Wentz is going to be a very happy man behind.
100%, man. His offensive line is really good. Probably one of the best in the NFL. I don't like to say the best because I feel like that's of course, it's biased to some people to
Yeah.
extent. But when you reach too high, you get shot down faster. So I say we're one of the best offensive lines in the NFL.
One of the best is
Give
a
us the
fair
benefit.
one. It's like top 10 is a very safe bet. Top 5 also pretty likely if Fisher gets back healthy, with the potential to be number 1.
100%. Nomadic Brian in the chat said offensive line coach are already perhaps the best, adding another Pro Bowl quality in Fisher. Con is Fisher still got to heal. Yeah, he still has to heal 100%. Offensive line, starting off with Tevy, I think it's going to probably be tricky, but Tevy does have experience at starting, and having a guy next to you as Quentin Nelson, who can be a plug-in at any moment, I think it's a good addition. So I don't think we're really struggle. Maybe the Rams might see most pressure out of all the teams before Fisher gets back, but I think the offensive line will still do good. Doesn't take much to see success. So especially if we have Carson Wentz, if he's throwing it on the fly, not taking too long, even though that's a con that we didn't mention, he takes too long to throw the football. But if he adjusted to that, I think that can also be a good plug-in and piece. And praise on the offensive line is that they have enough time for him to get the ball off. So I think we won't be that bad on the offensive line, but I think that's a good thing. Adding Fisher, we know what he can bring when he's on the field, and I think Tevy is a good replacement for now. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat for a second. He said, "How long did Fisher sign for?" Marquise came in with the Woj drop. We signed the Fisher for 1 year and $9 million. Appreciate you, Marquise. How was your week? If you don't mind letting me know. Coach Lawyer said, in my opinion, the only offensive line con would be money wrapped in our offensive line, post a healthy Fisher re-signed and Nelson and Smith re-signings. He said 1 year. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and hop into the cons if you don't mind about the offensive line.
Loyalist did touch on one of the cons, and that's going to be the money that's going to be tied up later on, especially after this year. Like, this is the final year where this offensive line is going to be a lot cheaper than what it will be. I mean, we're still paying them like top 10 money because of Ryan Kelly is already getting big money as one of the top paid centers. He's no longer the number 1, but he previously was. Quentin Nelson, he's in the last year of his rookie deal, but he's going to have that 5th-year option next year, which is going to take his contract to another level. Fisher is paid pretty well, not great for a left tackle, but pretty well for the 1 year. But if he proves to be healthy and a big improvement, then he's going to get a pretty sizable deal. And of course, you got Braden Smith, who is also on the last year of his rookie deal, and he's going to have a big payday, hopefully with the Colts. And I'm betting it probably will be for the Colts. There is some movement on contract talks with him, but that is a con going forward after this year is going to be just how much money is going to be tied up. But as long as the protection is good, I don't care. Like, after what I saw with Andrew Luck, I'd rather overspend on a great offensive line that I know is going to be great as long as they're healthy than not do enough for my quarterback. So I'll take that con right on the chin, but the biggest con, at least for this year, though, is going to be that left tackle spot, because if Fisher is not healthy for an extended period of time or doesn't get back to that same level, then that is a pretty big hole in this offensive line, since it is the most important O-line position. I'm not very confident in Tevi, I'm going to be honest. Sure, he has been a starter in years past, but he did not look very well at all there. He's allowed more pressures than any other offensive lineman over the last 3 years because he's been healthy and been able to be on the field a lot, but that is not a good look as the left tackle for the Chargers the last 3 years. Hopefully maybe playing with Nelson helps him out a little bit, but based off of what I've seen previously, I think he's a lateral move from Chaz Green and Raven Clark. Maybe a slight improvement, if anything, just because of health, and maybe a little bit better in the run block. But pass blocking, I'm very scared with him in the lineup. Davenport also very, very bad. He doesn't have the same amount of pressures allowed just because he's been a kind of backup guy, but he was a backup in Texas with the Texans. He wasn't able to earn a consistent starting job with them, and we've seen how bad their O-line's been. Whenever he did play, he didn't really impress me too much. I kind of like his tape a little bit more than Tevi's, but there's just not as much to go on, and it's a little bit scary. Will Holden is the camp body who's been kind of impressing and been getting a few starting snaps, so we'll see. I haven't been able to see a whole lot on him because he's just been a fringe practice guy for most of his career. So there's not much to really go off of, and we'll see if he is something really. But that's when we're talking about two guys who have not impressed me at all in pass blocking in the past, and a camp body as your starting left tackles, that's definitely a big concern. So whenever we have Fisher out, especially for the start of the year, as I said earlier, keep Jack Doyle on that left side. Maybe put Mo Alley Cox there as well, because both of them are great pass blocking tight ends. Maybe do some rollouts to the other side, some RPOs and stuff. A lot of quick passing, because we cannot let Carson Wentz feel that pressure from the blind side, especially considering who we're going up against early.
Yeah, man, 100%. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat. Chat was going crazy while you were talking. Marquis said, my week was good. How about yours, Coach Shock? My week was fast-paced. Can't complain. Anthony said, if Fisher comes in and does really good, y'all think he's going to demand too much? I probably doubt it. I mean, if he does demand too much, Ballard, he'll probably just send the packing. But Nomadic Brian said, from what I hear, we can sign Leonard, Nelson, and Smith and still hold the team mostly intact. Not mad at that at all. This is a team-oriented franchise. Hey, Joe, how you doing? How was your week? He said, what do you think about possibly franchise tagging Nelson to make room for re-signing other players? We almost have never do that type of stuff. Joe said, one con is that we don't have Ebron. LOL, just kidding. What's going on, Mac? How you doing? How was your week? So we can go ahead and hop into this topic really quickly. You can go ahead and answer that one first.
Yeah, franchise tagging Nelson after this year. After this year is going to be the 5th-year option, which is going to automatically be a pretty high salary. But then franchising tagging him will take him even higher. But even then might not be as high as what he's eventually going to get. So I don't see that happening, though, perchance, because I think they're going to want to get a deal done as soon as possible before this cap goes up and shoots his price probably even higher. I think they're going to just not do the franchise tag. They haven't done it in the past before, so I'm hoping that they can just get a deal done as soon as possible, and because we need to lock this guy up long term. I mean, he is the guy who, in the NFL, if I'm going to have him line up against Aaron Donald one-on-one, I can actually feel semi-confident that he can either slow him down or maybe even shut him down. Like, he is one of the few guys I could possibly even say that without sounding ridiculous. And I don't know if he will be able to shut him down because Aaron Donald is a beast, but I really hope I'm going to be able to find out the answer week 2 because, come on, Rams defensive coordinator, I know you're going to say, hey, we should probably exploit Glowinski on the other side or maybe have a stunt towards the left tackle, try and hit the Colts' weak points. But come on, aren't you a little bit curious, Jack Del Rio, if Donald can beat Nelson or vice versa? As they say in Godzilla, let them fight.
Oh my goodness. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat for a second. Joe said, I'm good. I wish I was still in Orlando. I missed vacation. Welcome back to the real world, bucko. Appreciate you, though. Nomadic Brian said, we need them pancakes. Extra syrup, please. Put a little butter on top of it as well. 100%.
Maybe a little bit of chocolate chips.
That, too, if you want to spice it up. But, yeah, man, 100%. Yeah, this offensive line, the cons is definitely maybe contract extensions. But I think all of them, I think the front office will probably get the deals done maybe before the season starts. You don't want to wait too long because we know other people and other teams need contracts as well. And you don't want them breaking the bank before you have to, because we know if someone else breaks the bank before Quentin Nelson gets paid, we know Quentin Nelson is probably going to raise that cap and we're going to have to spend more money than we usually have to. But I think we're going to get deals done maybe before the season start. You'll probably see them all line up back to back to back, which will probably be dope because that's just more content for all of us, writing wise and video wise. So I'm pretty sure we're expecting to get some deals done before the season start. Not worried about that. But when it comes to the salary cap that people was talking about earlier, I think paying your offensive line is actually a good thing because you're going to have a all elite line for a while. And plus keeping them together is another bonus. Now, of course, when you come to other players like, the Braden Smiths or the Mark Lewinsky's, it's, of course, Mark, you want him around. But if you have to let one go, I'm pretty sure he's probably going to be the one out the door, either him or Eric Fisher if he can't stay healthy. But, paying our guys is never really an issue for me. Like I say, everyone deserves their money. And, they're going to have to get paid eventually anyway. And would you rather pay him or would you rather play against him? But, that's just how it is, how I look at it. He said, I'd pay to see that matchup. Look at Cole Lloyd. I like that.
Go get them tickets, man. Week 2, baby. Here we go.
100%. He said, it's okay. I'm going to Indianapolis for the preseason game. I'm not mad at that. What's going on, Mike? How was your week? He said, man, I hope we don't have this wide receiver court issues. That crap blows me every time that happens. Yeah, man. Anthony Harris said, bring the juice. Better watch out. Y'all two keep up the good work and research. Told y'all that y'all are a good combo. Look at you. I mean, that's the only reason I asked him to come back, right?
I'm glad I can live up to the hype, man. But yeah, like back on those contract talks, there's 5 guys, I believe, who are major offensive linemen who are going to need a deal after this year or maybe not. Like we'll have to make a decision on. There's Quentin Nelson, who is most likely going to be a 5th-year option anyways. There's Braden Smith. Those 2 are the absolute must re-signs. Fisher, to be determined. We'll see his health situation. Then you got Glowinski, who, like you said, if there's one that we're going to let go, it's probably going to be Glowinski. And then there's his primary backup, who I think could possibly be in a competition with Glowinski, is Chris Reed. He is a average to above average guard who's much better as a pass blocker than he is as a run blocker. So if they want to prioritize a pass blocking guard going forward instead of a run blocking guard going forward at that right guard spot, might as well go Chris Reed. We'll see how he is. He was pretty solid with the Panthers, so I really like the odds of at least him maybe re-signing for cheaper than Glowinski, or maybe we throw in Pinter or someone else that we've recently drafted over there at the right guard spot, because I think we can survive with just a decent guy at right guard with Kelly and Smith in between them.
Yeah, 100%. He said he feels like Smith may leave. Marquise Beverly says, Coach Nation, Rocky Sims going to step it up, and I'm behind him 100%. We're going to go ahead and hop into that later. But let's go ahead after talking about the offensive line. The defensive line pros and cons. Appreciate everybody that's tuning in. Man, my ideas with this definitely reached the hour mark, but we can keep going. Defensive line pros and the defensive line's pros and cons. Let's go ahead and hop about it. Talk about the pros for the defensive line.
All right, so the pros for this defensive line, one, this is a crazy long defensive line. And I'm not talking like height or anything. I'm talking arm width. These guys are long. I mean, you got DeForest Buckner, you got Dio, you got Quiddy. You got some really, really interesting guys who are going to be able to get some separation from blockers just by reaching out. Mm-hmm. And we'll see if they can learn to use their hands a little bit better, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Also, a big pro is the defensive tackles. I mean, like I said, Buckner, not only crazy long, but a phenomenal athlete, speed, strength, you name it. Great leader. One of the best pass rushing defensive tackles, not named Aaron Donald in the NFL. Also a phenomenal run blocker or a run defender. And I've been waiting a long time for a defensive tackle like DeForest Buckner. I've been chanting for years, let's get some interior help on this defense. All the way back in like 2009. And we finally got Chris Ballard finally gave me my wish and gave me a dominant defensive tackle, which in this Tampa 2 scheme, you need to get pressure with those front four guys. And we saw what Warren Sapp's impact was in the Tampa 2 defense back in the day. DeForest Buckner has that potential to be the Warren Sapp of this defense.
Oh, yeah. 100%, man.
Of course, you got Grover Stewart, who is a phenomenal nose tackle as well. Very good run blocker. And surprisingly, he's been developing a bit as a pass rusher, too. So I'm really excited to see these two long-term. Both of them are going to be here for a while, and they're both relatively young. They're not like the youngest guys, but they're still on their beginning of their second contract, so they're just hitting their prime.
Yeah, man, 100%. Young defensive line, very good at what they do. I think, like I say all the time, the pro about this is if DeForest Buckner's on the field, the defensive line will flourish. I don't care what no one says. DeForest Buckner is that guy that needs to. He has the Aaron Donald effect, and I don't think a lot of people talk about that. Of course, Aaron Donald's a monster and all this good highlights and stuff, but because we're the Colts, we don't get media time, we don't get publicity like that. They don't really see how good DeForest Buckner is, and he definitely has that effect. And you have DeForest Buckner. The person behind him is Grover Stewart. We know how good Grover Stewart is. He got paid last year. Definitely worth it. We got Kamoko Toure. I mean, of course, we've seen the ups and downs about him, but we know how good he can be potentially. We got Dio, wingspan longer than LeBron James. We talked about the wingspan earlier with you. That's a plus. We just got a first-round pick in Kwity Paye, which we needed. He can have a very good effect going into next season. And you know, when we draft pass rush, and it's only for one purpose, is actually to go get the quarterback. And the last time we drafted pass rush and actually had success, I want to knock on wood, but Robert Masters and Dwight Freeney, when we drafted them, they came in and had a very huge impact. And I think Kwity Paye can have a very huge impact as well, because we know players on that defensive line is going to get double teamed, and it's going to open up for him. And then when you think about the edge rush, you think about Kenny Moore, who's another blitzer coming from that nickel position that can go get the quarterback at any moment as well. So I think this defensive line can be a very good one going into next season. Of course, it's underrated. I mean, but that's just the Colts. We're always underrated. So, I mean, it doesn't bother me at all. But I think this defensive line can be really good for the few seasons because they're young and they can stay together as well.
Yeah, this is a elite athletic defensive line, and not yet in terms of production, of course, because we still need to see these young guys outside of the defensive tackles kind of step up. This is their year to step up, especially Kamoko Toure and Taekwon Lewis being on their last years of their rookie contract. But
Mm-hmm.
when we're talking about just pure athletes, you got some of the best athletes in the game on this defensive line. I mean, Ben Banogu, I know he is like the black sheep of the family basically on this defensive line at this point. He is a phenomenal athlete. You got Taekwon Lewis, crazy good athlete. DeForest Buckner, insane. Kwity Paye is, at this point, the stuff of legend with his workouts. So if you guys are really big fans of the underwear Olympics of the scouting combine or the pro days, these guys absolutely dominate on those days in terms of athletic testing. So these guys, I'm so excited to see if they can reach that potential. It's going to be interesting, but they're going to have some great mentorship with DeForest Buckner on the field and also Robert Mathis off of it.
Yeah, man, 100%. The athleticism is there. That's the potential we can see. We never talk about how good they can be, but we know the ceiling is very good for the defensive line. And I think that's why it's really underrated because nobody really looks for the potential anymore. They just think about what we have and comparing them to other teams. But I think about the potential. That's all it's about. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat. Nomadic Brian said, Pro Buckner is a beast. Stewart is underappreciated. Mike Dillon said, top 5 defense, but if this edge rush gets better, we would be in the AFC Championship game. Now let's go ahead and hop into the cons.
Well, the cons are the defensive ends are very underdeveloped at this point. There's not a whole lot of proven production at this point. The most proven ones are Taekwon and Kamoko is more of a situational pass rusher. He is not a run defender. That's never been his game, and I don't know if that ever will be his game. But when healthy, Kamoko Toure has shown to be a very explosive, very efficient, even game-wrecking defensive end, especially 2018 Kansas City game, which everyone remembers very fondly, except for the fact that that was the game that he got injured and he's still recovering from that injury. But if he's healthy and he gets back to that level, then we have one of the best situational rushers in the game. Big if, but I really love the potential, and this is the year for it. Taekwon Lewis, very versatile inside-outside defensive end, even better athlete. And if there's a guy that I'm going to project as going to be a breakout candidate, it's going to be Taekwon Lewis. I have loved his game, and I think he's going to take that Danico Autry role and run with it. I honestly was hoping that he was going to get more snaps this past year than Danico Autry at some point, and we did see some flashes of that. But I really think that with this full-time role, he could have a very, very fun season, and is going to be interesting to see if we decide to re-sign him. You talked about Kwity. Kwity is phenomenal of a prospect, but the con is he does need some development. He is not the most pro-ready pass rusher in this draft. That was Jalen Phillips, who went to Miami a little bit earlier, but Jalen Phillips has a lot of injury risk. But Kwity Paye's upside is better than pretty much anyone else in that pass rusher class, and he's got the work ethic, he's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the athleticism, he's got the bendiness, but he needs to learn to be more consistent with his hands. He's going to be a great run defender already, but once he gets that consistency with his technique on the defensive end spot, it's going to be phenomenal to watch.
100%, man. Definitely the cons is Kamoko Toure's production, his injury history. Can he ever recover? Kwity Paye, can he ever become his full potential going into the NFL? How quick can he develop? I think that's the thing. Because when you put him out there on the field, this is not college football. This is the NFL. Going against grown men here. And it's going to take some time for him to actually develop and be that guy that we asked for when we drafted him. He's going to get put on his butt a few times. He's going to get held up. So, of course, we're going to see the frustration from Colts fans. But all real fans know pass rush is probably one of the most difficult positions in the NFL. And it takes a while for them to develop as well. So, I think that's one of the things you have to worry about is the durability for our defensive line. And how fast can Kwity Paye develop and go into that guy? Let's hop into the chat really quick. Nomadic Brian said the defensive losses of Houston and Autry accounting for many of them team sacks, Houston's leadership is gone. Rookies are going to have to cook a little. Yeah, man, it's going to have to take a while for them to develop. But yeah, for sure, I definitely see the potential there. You mentioned Tyquan Lewis. I definitely think him and Grover Stewart are going to be two key pieces for this defensive line, and I think those are two sleepers as well because nobody really talk about those two. And I think those two next year can really have their roles at their time on the field can definitely be adjusted, and they can see the field more. And I think they can really be those go-to guy pieces for the defensive line.
Yeah, that is going to be very interesting to watch how much this development can be because Grover Stewart, I don't think has even hit his ceiling, and he's considered one of the best nose tackles in the game. Tyquan Lewis, he's never had that role as the starter at this point. He's always been the rotational guy, situational guy a little bit, but he's occasionally had starting snaps, especially his rookie year and at times last year, but he's never been that guy for an entire season. So if we can have him fully develop as that, I am very excited. Another guy who also needs to develop is Dio Adebanyo, but the problem is that Dio's currently rehabbing from an Achilles injury, and that's going to be tough to see if he's going to live up to that hype that he had previously, at least for rookie year. 2022, I'm very excited for Dio because we're going to have even more snaps for him with possibly one of Kamoko or Tyquan leaving. Al-Quadin Muhammad is also on the last year of his deal. Ben Banogu, if he does not produce or show much this year, he could be on the chopping block. So I'm really excited to see if Dio can develop next year. But at least for 2021, I got some low expectations. Maybe at the end of the year we see something from him, but I kind of evaluate it as the upside for his rookie year is the Jeffrey Simmons rookie year coming off of his injury. The downside is like he just does not play it a whole lot because they just decide, hey, let's not rush it, push it back to next year. This is a redshirt year, and then get you out next year to unleash havoc with Quiddy.
Yeah, man, 100%. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat. Nomadic Brian said, following year pass rush should spike upward significantly. I do agree. Mm-hmm. Why? Because, Justin Houston isn't there. Of course, he was a good piece, but he was a little old. I think our defensive line got a little bit younger, and that gives us a little bit more athleticism, and I think that's a boost. Of course, we lost to Nico Autry, but like I said, age and athleticism can go very far into the next season. And, hey, I think Autry was chasing money at this point. He went to Tennessee, and now he's suffering because he's going to be in pass coverage next year. So, joke's on you.
Yeah, and that wasn't even a very good fit for him, in my opinion. I think he is really better as a 4-3 guy than a 3-4 guy. He's played in both systems. 3-4 he had some success with, but 4-3 was where he really shined. And if they're going to be asking him to drop back, like you said, the Titans are going to pick that apart. Nyheim Hines or Jonathan Taylor out of the backfield will pick that apart. I really appreciate what Nico Autry did for the Colts, but
100%.
I am a little bit looking forward to seeing if he drops back versus the Colts and then just gets juked out of his mind by one of the Colts running backs or something. Because it's not. I'm not laughing more so at him. I'm just laughing at the ridiculousness of the Titans to decide that that's a good idea.
Shout out to Mike Vrabel.
Mike Vrabel. I absolutely love his degradation of the Titans defense over the years. It's gotten worse every single year, and he's a defensive coach.
Hey, man. It's kind of weird when you see a guy that won a few Super Bowls but don't have a playbook to cheat with, huh? See how it works out? Not everybody's a coach. But let's go ahead and, before I get into it, I think Autry, I think he should have swapped roles with him and Bud Dupree. They both went to the same team, but I think Autry probably would have flourished more in Pittsburgh. And I think Bud Dupree should have just swapped and just went to Tennessee by himself. But, hey, they both ended up there. Best of luck in the season. This is no slander. I never do that. That's not me. Tino said, how many sacks do you think Darius Leonard will have next season?
Well, I've been kind of in the business of doing some stat projections for the Colts. I'm currently
Ah,
working on the wide receiver and tight end ones for the Blue Stable. Shameless plug
ah,
right there.
ah.
But I will be getting to the linebackers at some point. Defense is a little bit tougher to stat project. But I think we could see an uptick on Darius Leonard's blitzing. I mean, he's been not used there as much compared to some of his other linebackers, but he's been one of the most efficient pass rushing.
Huh? What happened?
I just noticed a very shameless plug.
What, something like this? Like that? Is that the thing that's popping up that you're talking about? Oh, this
What?
shameless plug?
What?
Oh.
What? Have you no shame? No, I don't. But anyways, Leonard, I'm thinking in terms of his sacks, I think he's going to get back to around like 4 to 5 sacks, maybe even get back to 6. He previously did have 7 sacks in his rookie year when he only blitzed 28 times, which is one of the most efficient blitzing seasons in NFL history from a middle linebacker or middle linebacker. So he hasn't quite replicated that level of efficiency, but he's been very, very good even after that. So I think this is the year where, especially early on, if those defensive ends are still developing, he might dial up a little bit more blitzes to kind of supplement that as the defensive ends are developing, and especially when we're going up against our toughest stretch of schedule. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what Leonard will do.
100%. Anthony said, I'm going to say Leonard has 5 interceptions without defensive line stepping up. Mike said, do you think Eberflus deserved a head coaching job before Sirianni? He said, Leonard busy leading teams in tackles. He said, yes, Sirianni was garbage. But I think when it comes to that, I think it's more on the coach than actually deserving. Because, sometimes coaches want to take that risk and go out on the leap of faith and become a head coach and see how it goes. And then someone, when it's not succeeding, they just go back to their regular position. So I don't think it has something to do with someone deserving a head coaching job before Sirianni, because they both received offers. I mean, but it was just that Sirianni took it and went to Philly. Now we know Philly is not the best place to go to start a head coach, but it's all in the learning experience. So when other teams see that you have head coaching jobs under your belt, they'll go out and take that risk on you. So I mean, they both received offers, but Eberflus decided to stay. So, I mean, that don't have anything to do with deserving, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think both of them eventually would have to deserve a head coaching job in the NFL. I don't know how Sirianni will do because the play calling duties were predominantly Reich. He was the main guy of the offense, though Sirianni was a very big help to it. Like, let's not diminish that Sirianni was a very strong offensive coordinator for the Colts, but we haven't seen him independent of Reich in terms of establishing a offensive identity. So we'll see how he does there. And Eberflus at least had a little bit more independence with the defense in terms of the delegation of duties between head coach and coordinator. So I would have felt that Eberflus should have been hired before Sirianni, but a lot of teams really want that young offensive guru archetype for their head coach. So Sirianni definitely fits that a little bit more than Eberflus, but we'll see what happens with Eberflus later on. I think he's probably going to be gone after this year, especially if we're all projecting the Colts to possibly make that leap into the top 5 defense. Yeah, Eberflus probably is going to get some very lucrative deals at that point.
Yeah, man. No kidding. I was talking about Darius Leonard. He mentioned sacks. I think this is going to be Darius Leonard's year. His rookie year was very impressive. They led the league in tackles. And most players, when they have success in their rookie year, they go for a slump the year after. But I think Darius Leonard will bounce back to normal, and I think he will really flourish next season. And I think he's going to be that guy, and he's going to put the NFL on notice. He's going to give us more television time because he's going to be popping off of screens. And it's going to be so good that the NFL is just going to be like, you know what, we got to put the Colts on TV. We need to see what they're really talking about. So I think Darius Leonard will have a very good season next year. because he did take a little step back last year. We're just going to be honest. He did take a little step back, but I think next year, with Anthony Walker Jr.'s being gone, he knows he's going to have to step up and train Bobby Okereke. And I think Darius Leonard's going to take that big step next season and go back to his normal self and being the maniac. We love you, Darius Leonard.
Yeah, Darius Leonard for next year. He, in his rookie year, was leading the league in tackles despite missing a game because of a concussion, which was the Patriots game, which we sadly have lost. But anyways, but yeah, since 2018 when he entered the league, he has more forced fumbles than any other linebacker, more tackles per game than any other linebacker. He has more interceptions than pretty much any other linebacker outside of one. And he has more takeaways than any other linebacker in the NFL. He racks up the highlight play. He is very clutch, especially late in games. He has single-handedly sealed us wins. I can't say enough amazing things about Darius Leonard. Did he regress a little bit last year, especially in coverage? Yes. The year before, he was phenomenal in coverage. If he can get back to that level, and he now has a lot more duties, of course. He's going to be calling a few plays now, splitting that a little bit with Bobby Okereke, but he's stepping into more of that leadership role with Walker gone. He is going to have a very interesting year. If he puts everything together in terms of he stays fully healthy for all 16 games, which he has yet to do this career because he's gotten a little bit of dings throughout each year, like missing a game to 3. But if he stays fully healthy, he's going to get a lot more hype for end of the year stats. He is going to get if he maintains his dominance in the run defense, it's going to be phenomenal as well. If he bounces back to the 2019 coverage year, that's going to be elite coverage. If he gets back to the same level of, like, if they're dialing up more blitzes for him and he racks up even more sacks again, it's going to be insane of a year. Like, I can't wait to see what he does, especially now that he has year 2 playing right behind DeForest Buckner, who I think could also make another leap. That is going to be some very, very dangerous defense right there. Mwah, I love it.
Yes, absolutely. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat. William said, "Hey, I'm sorry." Hello. He said, "Hello. I'm sorry I'm so late. I'm so sorry I'm late. I completely forgot it was Friday." Well, happy Friday. How was your week, William? It's okay that you're here. Anthony said, "Leonard's been cut weight to become more elusive." Nomadic Brian said, "Leonard sounds like a pro." William says, "Dang, Robbins is wearing your lab coat today." Hey, man, you got to get in the lab when you're talking to Colts, man. So now that we're talking about Darius Leonard, it's no other way other than transpire into the linebacker core. Let's talk about the pros and cons. Go ahead. Let's hop into it.
All right. Well, the pro is that we have 2 absolutely great modern linebackers for the Colts right now. Darius Leonard is the exact archetype for not what the old school linebacker is, but the new school linebacker is. He is like, I've already talked ad nauseum about him, of course. I don't think I should talk as much now because of him, because I've pretty much hit everything on that front that I can really feel like. But then you got Bobby Okereke, a.k.a. future Hall of Famer, according to Pat, the prophetic boomstick McAfee. He has been a very, very good linebacker for the Colts, but he's been kind of stuck between 2 different roles throughout his career so far, with occasionally being the Mike linebacker, but also being Sam, where he's not exactly the perfect fit for. But I'm really excited for Bobby Okereke. He has very similar traits to Leonard in terms of his size, his speed, his ranginess, but also combines that with he has more experience in terms of the mental side of the game, at least coming out as he was the team captain and leader of the defense at Stanford. So the dude is going to be crazy smart, of course. But he's got Mike experience and play calling experience previously in college. Not quite at the NFL level, though, because of Anthony Walker. But he could also be stepping into that play calling role a little bit with Darius Leonard. So I'm really excited for those 2, the Colts linebackers of the future.
Yeah, man, 100%, man. This linebacker core has so much potential. I don't know what I'm doing right now.
What are you
Okay.
doing, man?
Trying to edit something, but he said 100%. Said it was fine. But yeah, man, Bobby Okereke, one of the fastest linebackers in the NFL, can definitely at any moment really flourish if he develops what he needs to develop to become that good linebacker too that Anthony Walker Jr. was. Because look, like we always say, Anthony Walker did some things that Bobby Okereke couldn't do. And one for thing, he was a good leader, and Bobby Okereke is going to have to fill some shoes like that coverage and good tackling that Anthony Walker Jr. did. Anthony Walker Jr. was a very good tackle, but the ceiling for Bobby Okereke is so high. We know he can lurk the football at any moment in the middle of the field. And a good side duo with him is Darius Leonard. The sky is the limit at any moment. We know we're expecting Darius Leonard to bounce back and be really good next year. But we know how quick Bobby Okereke can be. But now let's hop into the cons, and I'm going to let you go first.
Thank you for that. You're there's a very much a gentleman for doing that.
Oh, no problem.
But the biggest con I can see is while I do absolutely love Darius Leonard and Bobby Okereke in terms of sideline to sideline ability, when it comes to inside run, there's a little bit of a weakness there, as Anthony Walker was the guy who kind of absorbed blocks, was able to shed blocks a little bit better on inside runs, and was able to stop the middle run pretty effectively. Darius Leonard has been developing on that front, but when you run it directly at him, he can at times struggle to shed blocks. Same thing with Bobby Okereke, as they're both a little bit smaller, more undersized linebackers, so that can be a weakness for that kind of archetype. But at this point, we don't really have a proven guy who can do that. If there's a inside run, he can absolutely just wreck the play, blowing up a linebacker and getting to the or blowing up an offensive lineman and getting to the ball carrier. Hopefully, Darius Leonard, he has been slimming down, and maybe he can just not be hit by them, like just evade the blocker, and then get to the runner. But at this point, with that, I don't know who is going to really step up for that. Maybe it's going to be Matt Adams or Zaire Franklin, who are long-time Sam linebackers. They're late-round guys who haven't had a whole lot of upside, but are pretty solid in the run at least. Maybe you see a undrafted free agent like we have Isaiah Kufusi coming out this year. I'm hoping he makes the roster so that way we keep the undrafted free agent streak going. But he definitely is a really strong run defender. But again, these are some younger, unproven, not having a whole lot of snaps and starting experienced guys.
Yeah, man, 100%, man. Let's go ahead and hop to the chat for a second. Matt Brown said, pro Okereke potential for balanced pass rush and defensive upgrade. Anthony said, I'm more excited to see this year to get going than I ever have. Tino said, same here, Anthony. And Matt Brown said, Con Walker is gone, and the Okereke step up is a wait and see for us. 100%, man. That's one of the things I wanted to say is that the cons is, can Okereke be as good as Anthony Walker Jr.? Now, we're not asking him to be just as good, but can he be a little bit as good as him? And another thing is that the tackling was a big issue last year. There was a lot of whiff tackles, like we're almost there but couldn't really grab them. The angles on the tackles were very suspect last year. I think the tackling is going to have to be very upgraded to what we need them to do next year. Just to fix the angles, to be more agile. Most people talking about Darius Leonard shedding to become more elusive. And I think that's one of the things that maybe he took notice in to be more elusive going into next year. We're going to ask the linebackers to cover more tight ends next season. Of course, we know that's the scheme that we're running. So maybe we need to be more productive in that role as well. But now that's a pro. When you look at Bobby Okereke, he's quick enough to stay with any tight end in our division or on the schedule. So maybe that can be a big bonus going into us next year, is his coverage against tight ends. Now, of course, we had Darius Leonard doing that last year, but now that we have Bobby Okereke, that Anthony Walker Jr. is gone, maybe Eberflus may switch it up a little bit and put Darius Leonard back at his regular spot and have Bobby Okereke fill those shoes. But yeah, man, the experience for Bobby Okereke is not all there. Of course, he did have more snaps than Anthony Walker Jr., but the only thing is, can he fill his shoes? I think that's just the only con I can really see for the linebacker core besides the tackling. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat for a few seconds. He said, question, is Darius Leonard happen to make the defensive adjustment calls? We already agreed and we said yes on that. Anthony said, invalid I trust. We are truly building something special for the years to come. All it be it Colts starters stay healthy, our kryptonite, 100%. He said, I'm gonna have to call it BO for short. Short K, I think BO won't have an amazing rookie season. He's not a rookie. Like than other rookies that were shot up by linebackers around them after a few seasons as he grows. Yeah, he's not a rookie anymore.
Yeah, he's a third-year vet now. So
I think he'll take this.
Unless you count this as like him being the first year as like the full-time like starting Mike, I guess.
Yeah. I think he'll take the spotlight. That's basically what he's saying. We can agree with that. We can agree with that. But yeah, man, tackling and him filling shoes are the only cons for me for the linebacker core. Now let's hop into, we can just combine it, the corners and the safeties. We can just use it as the secondaries. Let's talk about the pros for the secondary spot.
All right, so the pros for this secondary, this is a very, very strong unit in terms of two-way ability. They have ability to defend the pass, like Xavier Rhodes and Kenny Moore both were top 10 coverage corners last year, according to Pro Football Focus's coverage grades, for what it's worth. But both of them have been phenomenal. Kenny Moore predominantly in the slot. Xavier Rhodes had a huge bounce back year last year. Julian Blackmon early year was a phenomenal cover guy as well, especially in the deeper areas of the zone. Kari Willis is the unsung hero of the defense. He has been nothing if not reliable, both in coverage and especially run defense, can lay the hammer. But there's a lot of guys who are able to both defend the run and get some pretty solid coverage snaps. There's also very solid depth, I'd say, at corner in particular. Rocky Sin, we'll see if he develops as the second boundary corner. But behind him, you got TJ Carey, who took over his role a little bit towards the end of the year. You also got Marvell Tell coming back, who had a phenomenal rookie year for where he was drafted and has amazing sky-high athletic potential. But he opted out last year because of COVID. It's his choice, of course, but I'm really excited to see if he can really develop, because I absolutely loved Marvell Tell's game. He didn't miss a single tackle in his rookie year. He was occasionally like a reserve here or there, but I'd love Tell. I just really like, we have absolutely two stud corners and two like good safeties, in my opinion. Questions a little bit behind that, but enough depth that where I feel if at least one of them goes down, I can feel decently confident about.
100%, man. Let's go ahead and hop into the chat. Nomadic Brian says, secondary pros, continuity is most players is back. Rhodes is closed. Blackmon will start healthy and more experienced. Kenny Moore, baby. I like it, man. The
Kenny
pros,
Moore.
Man. Kenny Moore is the best at what he does. Xavier Rhodes had a very good season last year. Wasn't expecting that, in my opinion, but even though I had seen the potential and I knew he can really flourish to that, because the Vikings secondary stinked, in my opinion. And that last year was not on him. It really wasn't. I just think the system and the scheme that they was running, I think that had more effect of what his production was costing. But I think his last year was flat out superb. We'll get into the cons later about Xavier Rhodes. But Xavier Rhodes, when he was on the field, he was a beast. Kari Willis and Julian Blackmon did a superb job in and out throughout the season. Overall, I really think that their ceiling is bright for that secondary duo. They can really cause damage back there, because one's a good headhunter, well, not headhunter, but a good tackler, and the other one's really good in coverage. So I think they really mesh very well. When it comes to Rocky Sin, he has a very good ceiling as well. We'll get into cons about him in a few. But, Marvell Tell, Isaiah Rodgers, you have two guys that are ready to step on the field. And if whenever they see that, I know they will flourish. We've seen the potential of Rodgers when Rhodes went down in that Bills game. Rodgers was fast enough to stay up with anybody. And I think when he caught that interception, of course, it got called back. Could have been a pick six because nobody was going to stop him. But he really has potential, and I think he should see the field more as well. But Fortel that sat out, I think he can have potential to really step up as well. We know that the cornerback 3 spot is open. They already addressed that, and I'm willing to see who's going to fight for that and take that spot. Like I said, man, this secondary group is really underrated. If they really mesh well, and it all relies on our pass rushers. Our pass rush gets the quarterback to hurry up a throw. We're going to pick it off, no matter whose it is. It can be Darius Leonard, Bobby Okereke. It can maybe even be. It can even be DeForest Buckner. The ball probably won't even get that far. He can catch a pick. It can be. It can be Rocky Sin. It could be the safeties. Like anybody can flourish in this scheme if the pass rush does what we asked them to do. And that's why I think the secondary is underrated because last year the pass rush was not there. But if the pass rush is there, they're going to see the bright light, man. Let's go ahead and hop into the cons about the secondary. You can go first.
Yeah, the cons about this is outside of Kenny Moore and Kari Willis, we don't have an absolute proven guy who we know is going to be a long-term fixture for the secondary. Kenny Moore, of course, absolute stud and still very, very young. And Kari Willis has been nothing if not reliable on this back end. But Julian Blackmon, he was phenomenal to the start of the year, but he kind of hit a weird rookie wall in the second half of the year. We'll see if he can deal with that. Maybe it was just stamina because of a longer season and still coming back from that injury. But I have to see more consistency from Blackmon. His potential is insane. We saw it in his rookie year. If he can maintain that level of play, then he definitely becomes that long-term piece that we really want him to be. And possibly even all-pro potential as Frank Reich has been hyping him up to be. But there's also, you got Rock Ya-Sin. Who knows if he's going to be a long-term piece at this point. He has been very up and down from week to week and season to season. I love some of the aspects of his play, but he's also been plagued by the same exact issues with being way too over-aggressive and grabby, especially on deeper routes, which gives us a lot of really bad deep offensive pass or defensive pass interference calls, which can absolutely kill a defense's momentum. Xavier Rhodes is not going to be a long-term guy at his age. TJ Carey, not going to be a long-term guy at his age. We'll see if Marvell Tell or Isaiah Rodgers develops into one of those guys. They have insane athletic profiles. I love Rodgers at least long-term as a returner for the team, but we'll see if he develops long-term as the corner for his play. Marvell Tell, very small sample size. Loved what I saw there, but again, it's just not proven on that front. And of course, I forgot one pro though, and I can't believe we haven't talked about this yet. How can we mention the secondary without bringing up the one all-pro in the secondary that we have?
George Odom?
George Odom.
Yeah, man. Yeah, he's all-pro. Of course, his talent doesn't get covered enough because of what he does, but he's definitely a solid piece and very needed on the team with what he does. Of course, we all know how good he can be, but of course, he wants to see the field more, and you think he can be more of an asset. I think that's one of the cons when it comes into the scheme that we run. Where can we really plug George Odom at, and whose spot is he taking? You know, like, I mean, he has the potential of what he said in college and all his stats and everything, but this isn't college anymore. This is the NFL. I mean, of course, he can get his time in any other organization, but we've seen the proven talent of the players on the field, and I just don't know who role he will take. Who role do you think he can take and actually flourishing?
Well, we might add a little bit of a wrinkle to our defense with a third safety looks happening more frequently this year. So that would be a bit interesting, especially if we are like on deeper concepts. We got a third safety maybe to substitute as a linebacker. Like you maybe like put Kari Willis like in the box as the linebacker and then have a third safety like George Odom or one of the Sean Davises in the back in the safety spot, along with Darius Leonard is going to be, of course, going to be playing as many snaps as possible at linebacker as well. So we'll see what happens. Maybe they add that third safety role that could be used in either nickel or dime packages, or maybe substitute a linebacker, or maybe just have three deep back But it'll be interesting to see if that is added because the Colts, I think, might be higher on Sean Davis, the one that we drafted, than Colts fans are right now. He's got some interesting potential as well. So maybe him or George Odom could be competing for that potential role that is added.
Yeah, man, 100%. The cons for me is the consistency. The consistency for our secondary was a lackluster last year. Of course, they started off the season really good, but when it started winding down before we got to the playoffs, they had some mishaps, man. The coverages was very soft. Of course, that has something to do with the coordinator as well, but the coverages was soft. We were getting beat on easy plays. Most of the tackling from the corners wasn't there. Of course, Rocky sends disciplinary actions. He wasn't disciplined enough. Xavier Rhodes was a 50-50 on the field. You know, you'll see him sometimes, and then sometimes you don't. Durability wasn't all the way there in our secondary as well. Of course, we've seen Kari on the field. I mean, we've seen Kari. Julian Blackman's coverage wasn't all the way there at the end of the year as well. Of course, he's a rookie, so he's adjusting to that. I think he'll be better next year. But we've seen TJ Carey. His durability wasn't all the way there as well. So I think durability and, you know, being more consistent was one of the cons for our secondary. I think if, you know, with the OTAs and everything, I think that can play an effect going into next season. I think they can be more consistent because when you look at the schedule, I mean, you can't show up one week and then disappear. You have to be on at every game at the beginning of the year because that's probably the toughest part. And our secondary is going to be tested very well because when they look at the film from last year, they're gonna test our secondaries. We got a bunch of gunslingers at the beginning of the season, so our secondary is gonna have to step up. They don't have a choice at this point. Anthony says the fans being back in the stands will affect all of our young players and rookies from last year, 100%. That's another thing that played a role into our games. We didn't have any attendance. Well, we had a little bit, but it wasn't the usual sold out crowd. So we would definitely see how that goes, but that's definitely my cons. Consistency and durability for the secondary. Big, let's say, what's up, man? How was your week? We're just about to wrap it up. But yeah, man, 100%. That's how I was thinking.
Yeah, with those cons, I mean, the biggest enemy of a zone coverage unit is a inconsistent or non-existent pass rush. So if that pass rush develops, then we'll see the zone defense at its peak because if the quarterback is in the pocket and he is clean, he's going to have time to pick apart the zone defense. He's going to find that one weak spot. All it takes is one guy being slightly a little bit out of place or just having a mismatch because of the zone defense keeping the guys exactly at their specific spot. And maybe you have a wide receiver crossing into a linebacker who might not be as good in zone coverage and allow a reception or even a bigger play later down the line. So ultimately, if we can get that pass rush, it's going to be a very good complementary fit with this secondary.
Yeah, man, 100%. Coach Loyal said, in my opinion, Hines' contract isn't discussed enough. His importance to our O is being overlooked. He opens up our playbook as much as wins mobility. I'm not usually a fan of resigning running backs. What's your thoughts?
I think he'll be re-signed. If there's any non-offensive line player who is going to be re-signed this year, I think it's going to be Hines. Very, very versatile, especially in kick returns, punt returns, receiving work, and even in the run game. I think he should get money similar to, if not even better than what Tariq Cohen got, which is around a 3-year, $6 million per year deal. So maybe give him a 3-year and like 6.5, 6.6, maybe even go as high as like 7 because of how much the cap is going to go up later on. But I agree. You shouldn't pay running backs much long term. You shouldn't commit crazy amount of money to running backs just because it is a very flimsy and non-durable position that has a very short shelf life, unfortunately. But at this point,
unless you're Frank Gore.
Unless you're Frank Gore, he is the exception to every single rule known to man. There are no laws when Gore is in the house. But anyways, Yeah, he is going to be very, very interesting to see if Hines gets that level of a deal or maybe goes somewhere else and tries to get even bigger because that type of player is starting to get much more valued. But because of his lower usage, I think he's going to be able to stick around longer. Despite his smaller size, he hasn't gotten injured yet. Knocks on every piece of wood I can find. But he yeah, he is a so far durable, younger, quick and lower usage guy that I think he could, for at least a 2 to 3 year time span, he can still be very, very productive in his role.
Yeah, 100%, man. Big Play said, who do you guys think is the weak spot in the defense?
Ooh, that is a tough one.
I mean, we all can take a majority vote of who we think may be the weakest spot. I would say Rocky Sin is probably the weak spot, but I mean, I have potential of him actually projecting to be really good next year. So if it's not him, I don't really know who else would probably be the weak spot.
If it depends on which Blackman is there. If it's early season Blackman, he's not even in this discussion.
Right.
But if his struggles continue from last year, then he would be the most obvious candidate for the weak spot, in my opinion. But Yasin, from week to week, has been like when he is off, it has really, really hurt the team. So, yeah, I'd put him as that as well.
When Dio becomes healthy, does he take over the edge spot in front of Teray, or is he purely rotational? I would say he's an interior guy, so I don't think he would take Teray's spot.
I don't know. He's a very versatile guy. I think, at least for his rookie year, he will be like possibly moving around with Taekwon a little bit along the defensive line. Like whenever it's an obvious pass rushing down, one or both of them are going to replace Grover Stewart along the defensive line somewhere, whether it's be at defensive tackle or defensive end. So honestly, I don't know if we can truly pigeonhole him into one spot at this point. He's just that versatile. So, and especially coming off of the injury, we don't know how long he will play for, how many snaps he will. Honestly, I'm just saying take it slow, make sure he is fully healthy once he gets back, and basically redshirt this year for at least majority of it. Like I'm not expecting him back in the first half of the year, and possibly not even until like the very end of the regular season or even playoffs. Just last thing I want is rushing a guy and hurting him long term. Dio, I think we can afford to be patient with all these guys that we're kind of trying to see if they're going to be long term guys already.
Yeah, 100%. Said Hines is a sleeper monster. I really hope we keep him around. Pretty sure we will. Teray is surprising and Kwity adjusting fast. Would be nice to get pass rush help and less pressure on the secondary. Hines could easily be our elusive big threat at any time. Yeah, man. I think we'll keep Hines around. I think he's a team guy. I don't know if he's really, money hungry like that. Plus, he's getting a lot of production. So why would you leave, right?
Yeah, he loves this
team.
offensive line. He loves the scheme that Reich has done. It keeps him fresh. It keeps him on the field. Still a pretty good role in the offense. I think he might have a lesser role this year just because he doesn't have Phillip Rivers, who loves to check down a lot. And plus, Marlon Mack is back, so that might take away a few snaps. Though I feel like Marlon Mack, if he cuts into anyone, it's going to be more so Jonathan Taylor a little bit on the ground, just because Marlon Mack is not the same receiving threat as either Hines or Taylor. But it's going to be interesting to see the Hines situation after this year, but I really want him back. I absolutely love Nyheim Hines. So let's get him some more touches. Let's get him some flips in the end zone, and let's give him some money.
Yeah, man, 100%. Everybody deserves to be paid. But on that note, we're going to go ahead and end it. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. It's been a long stream, almost 2 hours. 2 hours of content. High Octane say who's going to replace Walker in our linebacker group is definitely Bobby Okereke. He said, look at what Hines can do on special teams too. Yeah, that definitely got robbed a few times last year, but we're not going to talk about it. It's itself perhaps. It's a few problems. We know one of the returns was Teray's faults. He definitely turned around and tackled Hines on one of those kick returns, but it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It happens. It happens. We should trade Mac. I don't know what you're talking about, Williams. Coach Loyalist said, thanks, fellas. Yeah, man, no problem. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. Like I said,
Yeah.
every Friday around 5 o'clock, I'll be live. So, William, cancel your schedule around 5 p.m. Eastern so you can not be late and not blame me. But, it's all good. It's all love. No problem. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, though. I definitely have a video dropping tomorrow. You know me, everyday content. So you guys tune in for that. Appreciate you guys. Appreciate Lucas for stopping by.
Yeah, thank you guys for being such a very active comment section. We love interacting with you guys. It's very fun. I know we have a few inside jokes, especially with William Watton and whatever I'm wearing. But I always have a very good time just on this stream with Culture Shock here. A big part of it, of course, is Marcus, but also you guys. You guys are phenomenal, and I love you guys. No problem.
He said, see you, bathrobe.
Man, this isn't a bathrobe. What are you talking about? It was supposed to be a lab coat, remember?
Appreciate you guys, man. We out. This is Marcus and Lucas, and until next time, you've been Culture Shocked.